Hello, I'm Chris Waddell. Welcome to 60 Seconds, the stories and highlights from the Paralympics in Beijing. We will look at all the stories and all the highlights, but first, I'm joined by Tanny Gray-Thompson, wheelchair racing legend. Tanny, you're here with the BBC. What's that like? I know that you've been huge as far as your wheelchair racing career in England is concerned, and now you're taking a much bigger step in a lot of ways.
Well, it's completely different. I competed at 5 Paralympic Games. I retired last year because I just couldn't do Beijing. You know, I was kind of too old, too injured, to everything. But being on this side is just so different. It's amazing. You work much longer hours. It's still not very glamorous, but it's a lot of fun. You know, it's great being here. You know, watching all the teams, and for the first time ever, I actually get to watch my sport, because when you're competing, you don't see anything because you train, you race, you sleep. Well, now I'm actually at athletics all the time and having a great time.
Watching Ho Bin, the guy who lit the cauldron, do you feel sort of a kindred spirit at all? I know that you carried the Paralympic torch in a lot of ways, the proverbial Paralympic torch in England. Do you feel a kindred spirit to him?
Well, it's amazing, really, because you know, on the opening ceremony night, when the torch was being carried around the stadium, you really got the feeling that the Chinese people there didn't really know who the athletes were, even though they were gold medalists. But for him, I think he probably is a name that some people knew. But just the scale and the effort and everything that the Paralympics is will change his life, and will change lots of other Chinese athletes' lives. And I think that's amazing because, you know, China finished top of the medal table in Athens. They only brought athletes from like the Beijing area. You know, they didn't bring athletes from China, and they were incredible. And just that process of change and cultural change and attitudes as well is amazing. I came here 6 months ago, and I talked to a group of disabled people who were desperate for the Paralympics to be here, because they said, you know, life in China if you're disabled is hard, and they wanted the games to come so that it would sort of highlight those stories. And it's about elite sport, but it's also that other message that the Paralympics brings, and that's, I think, what's quite exciting about it, because everyone will remember that moment when he kind of dragged himself to the top of the stadium, and that makes it a really iconic moment.
Tanny, thank you very much for joining us. It's a pleasure to talk to one of the wheelchair legends and somebody who's carrying the torch for the Paralympics. Appreciate all the hard work that you're doing. Now we will look at 60 seconds, the stories and the highlights from the Paralympics here in Beijing.
Heading over to the National Aquatic Center, we now look at the action that took place in the women's 200-meter individual medley. Republic of South Africa's Nathalie du Toit, defending her world record and Paralympic record, was neck and neck the first half of the heat. However, she started to pull away in the second half to make it look easy, winning her third Paralympic gold medal, to the delight of these South African fans. Du Toit was the only one of 2 Paralympians who also competed in the 2000 Beijing Olympics. When asked about her victory, she said she went out there and gave it her all. Action on the courts on day 6 saw defending Paralympic champions Nick Taylor and David Wagner from the U.S. go head-to-head with Bas van Arp and Dori Timmermans van Hal from the Netherlands. At the bottom of your screen, Taylor and Wagner appeared to be cruising in the match after taking the first set 6-3. However, the Dutch pair was not to be counted out. Van Arp, the bronze medalist in Athens, and Timmermans van Hal rallied back to take it to deuce in the second set at 5-4. After seeing their lead be whittled down, the U.S. champions had had enough. They closed out the match with a victory 6-3, 6-4 to advance to the gold medal finals. Since 2004, Wagner and Taylor have only lost 3 times in Paralympic competition. Day 6 of these Beijing 2008 Paralympic Games saw controversy corrected after the women's 5,000-meter T54 race was held again. In what was a serious crash 4 days ago, racers battled it out on the track one more time. Germany's Sandra Graf took the early lead, but the women continued to fight for every single inch. Interestingly, the same cream that rose to the top on day 2 also rose again on day 6. Amanda McGrory of the U.S., who originally won bronze, finishes with the gold. Diane Roy of Canada and Shelley Woods of Great Britain had a photo finish for silver and bronze, respectively.
Thank you for joining us on 60 Seconds, the stories and the highlights from the Paralympics in Beijing. It was a pleasure to have Tanni Grey-Thompson join us, a wheelchair racing legend. Come join us again tomorrow on Paralympic Sport TV for more stories and more highlights.